Okay, thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Margaret Kensinger-Klopfer, and I'm with the County of San Luis Obispo Public Libraries. And we are so excited to be able to partner with the California State Library Ports program that does online tours and education. And today we have a really special treat with Hearst Castle because they're taking us up to the second floor, which they don't normally do. They're taking us to their library. You will have your camera turned off and your mics turned off, but you will be able to enter questions in chat. And we had a great time answering everybody's questions at our other programs that we've done with the wonderful Miss Tracy here. So don't worry, we'll get to your questions. Just put them in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and turn over the mic. So thank you everybody for being here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tracy, and I'm a tour guide at Hearst Castle. We are one of 280 California state parks, and I'm excited to share the library with you today. My primary position here is managing the Ports program, and the tour is brought to you through the Ports program. Let me share this slide with you. I'm going to step out of the way so my face doesn't freeze while I'm doing that. The California State Parks Ports program is at over 36 state parks, and they are free virtual tours for educators. So if you're a teacher, if you know a teacher or someone who would be interested in bringing Hearst Castle or many of our other state parks to their classroom, you can share this information with them. If you are a homeschool group, you are welcome to participate. We require about a minimum of 10 people to book a tour, but these resources are available to educators, whether they're in California or any part of the United States or really the world. We give tours all over. Our website is www.ports-ca.us. Ports stands for Parks Online Resources for Teachers and Students. That we also offer a lot of different activities and historic photos and activities where you can learn more about Hearst Castle through our website. That site will take you to other California state parks that offers these free virtual visits as well. So now that we have that out of the way, our tour today is going to spend a lot of time in the Hearst Library. We will go outside and end at the Neptune Pool. We'll have opportunities for question and answer. I am here live. I use a tripod and a camera. We walk around. I connect with you via the local cellular data, so it isn't always crystal clear. And so we'll just have to work with any of those challenges, but it offers us an opportunity to be here live in the library and ask those questions. Maybe I'm talking about something, but you see something else in the room, you are welcome to type it in the Q&A. Margaret's going to help me out. We're going to work together as a team, and we'll be able to explore this space together. As you know, libraries can be a magical place, whether it's a lavish country estate, whether it's a little nook in your own corner of your home, or whether it's one of our wonderful SLO county public libraries, which offer knowledge and culture to everyone. So libraries are a place of comfort, hopefully, yeah, in Hearst Castle they definitely are, and discovery. So let's discover the library here at Hearst Castle. The library at Hearst Castle is located on the second floor of Casa Grande, the big house. So its actual name is Casa Grande. That's what William Randolph Hearst called it, the big house. This is the main house at the Hearst Estate in San Simeon, California. There's 3 other cottages in addition to the big house. The architect was Julia Morgan, California's first licensed woman architect. She builds this for William Randolph Hearst, a famous Californian known as a newspaper publisher and a media mogul. The idea is first conceived in 1919 when Hearst would inherit the Hearst family ranch and the family fortune. And the year later in 1920, construction starts. It will go on throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and finally end in 1948, but they never finish. So construction is going on and off throughout a 28-year period. The library was first used in 1927. As you can see with my tripod, I sometimes kick it as I walk. Now, Hearst was not a rare book collector, not considered that. He did have an Americana collection, which included letters and papers of people like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. There are approximately 4,100 books in the library. Topics range from literature by Dickens, Mark Twain, Shakespeare. There's books on art and travel, history and religion, encyclopedias right here in this corner. The oldest book in the library dates back to the late 1600s and is written by a French playwright named Molière. Now, I spoke about libraries being magical places, places of comfort and discovery. So behind me, we have these easy seats, and they're situated on one of the largest rugs in the collection. It's 22 by 34 feet. The rug is covering a teak wood floor. And the Persian rug itself is a blue floral medallion design on a red field. And if we bring the camera over this way, this is one of 41 fireplaces that are incorporated within the rooms of the 3 cottages and the house. It's a 15th century Renaissance fireplace mantle carved of stone. In the center of the mantle, you'll see a wreath bearing cherubs and a scallop shell motif. After a wild February storm, William Randolph Hearst would write Julia Morgan a letter. He would say, as things are now, the library is rapidly becoming the living room on account of its warmth and comfort. You can see some stacks of books next to the fireplace. When Hearst passed away in 1951, the Hearst Corporation would retain the house. The family would continue to use it. But as it is passed over to the state of California by the late 1950s, the Hearst family would decide to keep some of the items throughout the collection, keep some of the books. So there were actually more than 4,000 books here in the library. Today, that's what we are left with, about 4,100. But as you can see, not much has changed. So there is less on the tables, as you can see, but if I share another image, it looked a little bit different. back in the early 1900s. More books. Notice the pottery. William Randolph Hearst started collecting Greek vases in 1901. He had amassed up to 450 by the 1930s. Today, there are about 155 Greek and Etruscan vases in the library. Most of them are on top of the bookcase. So if you locate the bookcases in the back, we can see they're still up there. They used to be held down with wire, but today they are held with quake wax. So in case of an earthquake, they will stay in place. Let's take a look at the oldest work of art in this room. It is one of the Greek vases, and it's over in the corner of this alcove. Now we can't get too close, but I will share an image with you. See if we can get it to come into view. It's pretty foggy outside right now, so we're not getting a lot of light coming in through the window. I will bring the vase closer. It is, oh, there we go. It's in that corner right up top. So notice what is pictured on this vase. These decorations give us some information about how the ancient Greeks lived. This vase is the oldest one in the room. It's from the 8th century BCE. So we're looking at a vase that's nearly 2,700 years old. This is called the Bering Amphora. Bering refers to the person who had owned it previously. And an amphora is a two-handled storage jar. This one is thought to have carried olive oil. Other amphoras might carry wine. This was created in a time period called the geometric period. So it's an early period in Greek vases. They're a little more rudimentary. They're geometric shapes. So we're noticing horses. These horses, they don't look quite realistic. Very thin legs, barrel chests. We have men in chariots. So we have charioteers going along. We've got circular patterns around the lip of the vase. On the neck of the vase, we have these cascading meander patterns. So it meanders, it seems to move without ending. It's a pattern that is ongoing. Between the charioteers, we have a rosette, rose-like shapes, and diamonds. And in a few moments, I would like to share a second vase, which would be made a few hundred years after this one. See the advancements of the Greek vases. So this is the oldest one in the collection. But let's get a little closer to this marble bust. And I'm going to adjust my tripod so we can get down to its level. I was in the room yesterday, just testing out the light. There we go. We had a lot more light in the room yesterday, more sun shining in through the window. There we are. We call this a double bust. It's Greco-Roman. It's carved from marble, and it's thought to be from the 1st or the 2nd century BCE. So it's over 2,000 years old. And one of my favorite parts of this is the hairstyles of the women. I would never get to work if I had to curl my hair this much. We have these several layers over the forehead of curls with a band around it. Some hair coming over the shoulders. And we'll see if we can, there we go. We can catch the other side. We get an idea of the hairstyles of women 2,000 years ago. Not too much has changed. A headband with some hair curled along the shoulders and a little bit of it pulled back. And we will see that this double bust, we'll see later that this double bust, Greco-Roman, 1st or 2nd century BCE work of art inspired something at the Neptune Pool when we end there. We're going to see her again, but made out of a new material and made in the 1930s. So this did inspire a work of art that is at the Neptune Pool. So the past definitely influences our current time period. If you see this white marble vase right here, get a little closer, that's Roman. And I mentioned earthquakes earlier. Now, the house itself is made out of concrete and reinforced steel. Julia Morgan was an architect in the early 1900s when the San Francisco earthquake would strike in 1906. Her office was destroyed even. So she is one of the architects that are rebuilding the city. Julia Morgan also studies in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts. It's a famous fine arts academy. It has been around since the 1600s. All the famous architects of the day desired to attend their architecture program. No woman had been allowed in the architecture program at the École until Julia Morgan came along, tested 3 times to get into the program, and finally on her 3rd time, they couldn't deny the scores that she was achieving on the tests. They allowed her in. Now, let's fast forward. 2003, there's a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. The epicenter, I think, is, I believe it's about maybe 6 miles away, or it's not that far away. And the structure of the house is good, of Hearst Castle, but this vase would break and crack in a few pieces. And it was restored and returned back to the house. So, and this is a 2,000-year-old marble vase. Now this one is Roman. We're going to go back to a Greek vase that I want to show you. It's above the doorway near the fireplace mantle. So we're going to come back here. I'm going to show you the location, and then we're going to bring up an image to get a better look at it. It's right there. This is also an amphora, just like the Bering Amphora with the charioteers we saw. It's a little bit of a different shape. It's not as long and slender. But in the center, we see Apollo playing a kithara, which is a stringed instrument. And it's thought that he's accompanied by his mother to his right and his sister Artemis on the left. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt and the moon. And she's the twin of Apollo. She's oftentimes associated with an animal. This is a fawn on the vase. Apollo is associated with the sun. He's the sun god, the god of medicine and healing, truth and light and reasoning. This vase is from the Archaic period. So it's another period which comes after the geometric period. It's about 2,500 years old, from the 6th century BCE. So it was created a couple hundred years after the previous vase we saw in the picture. We can see how advanced the Greeks had gotten in their design. Looks a little more realistic. And these vases, they're going to show us a window into the world of the Greeks, how they lived, what they believed in. You might, when you view these vases, you might see athletes, boxing, running races, playing games. You see a lot of mythology. There's heroic deeds. There's scenes of everyday life, women weaving. Now, I do have a vase that I want to show you. It was just returned. It was out for conservation. I've been here for 4 years. And I recently was introduced to the vase here. It's all the way in the other alcove. So we're going to walk through the library over the Persian rug. And I think we'll go this way. And again, I'm going to set up where we can get some nice light. There we go. I'm still waiting to receive more information on this particular vase, but I know some basics. It was out for about, I've heard 2 decades. Some of the time was spent at the visitor center. So if you've ever been to our visitor center, you may have seen this vase. But there was also a crack that had been restored. It was encircling one side below the neck and the handle. So if we look at a vase and we consider its anatomy, you're going to see the very top, that will be the lip of the vase. This is the neck of the vase. And of course, the handles go from the neck to the body. And we have the body of the vase here. Now, this is another amphora for olive oil, maybe wine. It's similar to the ones that we saw, except it has more of a sagging belly. So it's heavier on the bottom. And this one is about 2,300 years old. So it's from the 4th century BCE. And can anyone find Eros? That's our Cupid figure. But for the Greeks, he's Eros. Can anyone find him in the imagery? Oh, I'll get my shadow out of that way, right? Yeah, right towards the top, under the plant motif. And again, we're going to find that meander pattern towards the lower part of the belly of the vase. We see that meander pattern. And we're even going to see it again at the Neptune Pool. And you might notice it. It might be on an article of clothing or jewelry or a design at your house. It's a popular pattern that has reoccurred throughout history for thousands of years since the ancient Greeks. Let's see if we can. Yeah, it starts to get, trying to get us on the other side. But again, we might not have that light. Just have a little bit. But I'm really excited that we have this new vase back to explore. Someone did point out to me that we oftentimes think of the ancient Greeks as wearing white linen clothing. But here we can see there's actual detail and design on what the women are wearing. There we go. I'm going to hold it right there for a bit of time so you can explore the scene. There's a gentleman on a center bed of sorts with a stringed instrument. See two women on either side. There's even a goose down there. And then above that scene, we have two women seated. One of them looks like they're holding a mirror. It's just beautiful. So this is actually pretty large. It's about, I would say, at least 2 feet tall or so. Maybe it's hard to see the size, get the perspective. Let's see something a little smaller before we head out of the library. So if you have any questions right now about the library, now is a good time to start putting them into the chat so we can address those questions before we move on.
So I'll just share, we've got a comment about Julia Morgan that she was also a civil engineer. So
absolutely. She studied at the University of California, Berkeley. And she's one of several women that are attending that university. She's not the first one there. But they didn't have an architecture program in this area that she wanted to go to. She attends University of California, Berkeley. She most likely meets Phoebe Apperson Hearst. That would be his mother there. So she was influential for Julia Morgan. She also meets Bernard Maybeck, and he's a San Francisco architect. He would make the Palace of Fine Arts for the Panama Pacific International Exhibition. It was Maybeck who suggests to Julia Morgan to go to the École. They might be allowing women in.
My gosh, I have so many questions that I also wanted to know the answer to. So I'm glad everyone's thinking the same thing as me.
Go ahead.
So the first, I'll go ahead and go back first to last. Where was the conservation of the broken vase done, and how was it done?
That I cannot answer. I'm still waiting on information about that vase. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you guys do some conservation in-house though, right?
We do some conservation in-house, yes. And we sometimes invite experts to come in-house to do conservation here. Other times it's sent off.
Next one, this is one I wanted to know too. Did Hearst let guests go to the library, and I'm going to put in my own part of that, and touch everything in there, or just himself?
Yes, actually the library was a place for the guests to come. One particular guest, he was a book collector, Edward, I feel like Newton maybe was his last name. I hope I got that right. Anyone can correct me out there. But he was invited here, and he was asked, do you want to shoot or motor or play tennis or pool? Do you want to go horseback riding? He said, I don't want to do any of it. He's looking for the library. So when he came to the library, he thought it was a fine place. Hearst was not a rare book collector, but he did have an array of titles. Anyone could come and check out a book. However, you couldn't just grab a book. As you can see, there's these grills on the library, and they were locked. If you wanted to check out a book, you would have to ask the staff to take a book out. These books weren't really read by the guests. They would have modern books in the office. And the office is where Hearst's staff worked, where the communications department was, his switchboard operators. And they were books of the day, popular books, the ones in book clubs, and guests would typically check those books out. You're still checking a book out though, and they might use that to read before bed. The library was also the place where they would stage costumes for some of the big parties that were thrown. Hearst and his companion, Marion Davies, threw lots of parties, entertained a lot of different people, and they loved costume parties, especially for birthdays and special events. There was a Hawaiian themed party where one guest recalls coming to the library. There were racks of grass skirts and shells and beads. So this is where they might place some of the costumes. Hearst was getting his costumes through the Western Costume Company from Los Angeles. He was a media mogul. It wasn't just publishing newspapers, magazines, but he would be making movies with Cosmopolitan Productions.
Okay. Who selected the books in the library?
His mother picked out many of the books, and he also picked out books.
Is there central heating, or did they rely on the fireplaces only?
There are electric wall heaters, and then there were additional heaters that were brought in to like plug in wall heaters.
Mm-hmm. Did they use the fireplace in the library?
I'm sure they used it. I have not read any accounts of the fireplace being used in this room. I'm gonna guess they did.
How are the vases attached to the tables to not fall during earthquakes?
They'd use quake wax.
Okay. Do you need a controlled atmosphere to preserve the books?
We need a controlled atmosphere throughout the whole house. As some of you know, especially if you're inland, it's really hot in the summer here. And of course, can be really damp in the winter. So we have humidifiers and dehumidifiers, which are kept at a regulated temperature and checked every day. If we're dehumidifying a room, then they're pulling the water from the basins and disposing of that. So that is something that is checked throughout the house and the cottages every day.
Do you know about the people who did the wood paneling in the library?
I do, and I was going to talk about that. I know some of you wanted to see the titles, so we're going to talk about the paneling, and then we'll talk about the titles in this corner. So it was a San Francisco wood carver named Jules Supo who primarily did the bookcases. They are modeled after a 16th century Florentine Italian bookcase that Hearst had in his collection. That particular bookcase was not here at San Simeon. It was elsewhere. I'm not sure of the location. That is the bookcase that they modeled these off of. So they did apply antiquing methods to age them. There's worming in there, so there's little holes in the wood. These were carved in San Francisco at the studio of Jules Supo. Here he is pictured right here. He did a lot of the woodwork here. He did the teakwood cornice, which is the accent feature on the cornice on the exterior of the house, which is hangs over the third floor and is made up of animal figures and designs. So we see him actually carving the teakwood cornice in this image. He's at his studio in San Francisco. So he would carve the bookcases in San Francisco. Then they called it knockdown. They came in pieces and were reassembled here at San Simeon. So while we're here, let's get close and explore some of these topics. Well, we've got the new Webster's New International Dictionary, the Century Atlas of the World. We have the Standard Dictionary, the English language. We have Putnam's Complete Book of Quotations, Proverbs, and Household Words. So this seems like the reference section right here. Let's go to this section. This must be in French right here. Nouveaux Larousse illustrations. Again, I think it's more of a reference section here. So I'm going to turn us over here because there's atlas, encyclopedias, etc. So this looks like more religious books. We've got history of the Bible story, short studies in the science of comparative religions. Analytical concordance to the Bible. Some books on the next shelf would be The House of God, Old Religious Ballads and Carols, The Song of Songs. Let's see, let's go to another bookcase too. Let's try over in this corner since we haven't visited this corner yet. Ooh, we have some people out there that know their books. I see some comments coming in.
Oh.
Get my shadow out of the way. Canova's works. Canova, Antonio Canova, 19th century Italian artist. We have a marble sculpture of Venus of her in the assembly room. Shakespeare, Tales from Shakespeare, The History of French Literature. A book called The Communists. We have Victor Hugo on the second shelf. Napoleon. I think we have some books in oh, there's, yeah, here's the set of Moliere, the French playwright, actually in red. That must be those. So I hope that gives you all an idea of some of the books here.
Did Hearst speak French?
I don't believe so. He may have spoke a little bit of German, but I don't believe he was fluent in any languages.
Another question is the library open to researchers?
Not that I know of. I think it would have depend on if it went through the right channels, perhaps.
Okay, to answer or ask more of the questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, next question was about the ceiling. What type of ceiling does the library have?
That is a, let's see if we can get the best view. It looks a little distorted here. But this is a Spanish ceiling, and it's supposed to come from a castle, though we're not sure really of the location of that castle. And it has all these designs which are called coffers, the individual sets and shapes. And within the coffers are rosettes, so rose-like designs. And it's about 400 years old. So Hearst is collecting ceilings, purchasing them from art dealers, and they are being shipped from mostly Spain and Italy here to California. Sometimes the ceilings fit the space, sometimes they don't. And Julia Morgan would have her craftsmen do extension work and add modern materials to the ceiling to fit the space. And of course, antique them so they would look old.
How did they produce the electricity for the property?
Well, he originally has a hydroelectric power in the early 30s. And then by about, I think 27 or 28, PG&E would come to the area and supply the electricity.
Okay. Oh, somebody asked a follow-up for the ceiling. What is it made out of?
I believe it's walnut.
Okay. I'm sure this one you get a lot. When will the castle be open for tours again?
Well, I'm not privy to that information, but I'm hearing early 2022.
Thank you. Okay. And then a question someone had asked earlier was whether there was a bookcase that rotated in the library.
Right. There's no bookcase that rotates here. We do have a second library upstairs. So this is the main library, and then there's a Gothic library. Let me see if I have the image. I do not get reception up there. So here is Hearst's study, the Gothic library. There's another 3,000 plus books in there. There's also an area in that library, which is where some of the more rare books are stored, and they're not on the shelves.
Are the ceiling hanging light fixtures antique from
They are. Most of the ones that we see, especially here in the Gothic library image, and then even here, yeah, most of them are Spanish, and they've been fitted for electric lights.
So many good questions. Such a beautiful space. So did Hearst have a librarian who was unlocking the bookshelves and organizing everything?
No, he didn't. It would just be someone working in the office.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for all these great questions, everyone.
Okay, before we leave the library, is there anything else that you'd like to see here?
Oh, someone was asking, was the study or the Gothic library only for Hearst? And did Hearst have a favorite author?
He enjoyed Charles Dickens, actually. And his study was just for him. That was invitation only. That was his place where he could go and work, see his newspapers, contact his editors. So that was his place, his refuge. He did throw a lot of parties. He entertained a lot of people. Marion Davies, his companion, and the movie star of the early 1900s. She did a lot of entertaining with the people. And when she was out entertaining, he was sometimes in his study. He would come down for a cocktail hour around 7:30. He would come down to the assembly room and meet everyone there, have dinner with them. Then the movie, that was kind of the sequence of the evening, and then back to his study. So that was for him. And he would actually, let's see how here he's coming.
We might cut out a little bit. I just want to warn people, but don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. Margaret, can you see the elevator?
Yes.
Okay. So the stairs on the right are going to lead up to the third floor Gothic suite and Gothic study. He shares that with Marion Davies. They both have their own room. Between their rooms is a private sitting room. And again, that whole floor was theirs and his refuge. So you go up the stairs, one more floor, and you get to the Gothic suite and study. Now he would get on the elevator there. It would pass through here, the second floor, and it would go down the first floor. And then he would kind of emerge into the assembly room, which is something that we are going to do in just a moment. I'm going to share an image with you so you don't see me huffing and puffing down the stairs. And you're welcome to, if you want to ask questions while I'm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, while she's going down the stairs, I'm just going to put in the chat one more time. We will be having another ports program next Friday with Angel Island. So I'm going to put that information in the chat for everyone. That'll be next Friday, December 10th at 10 a.m. So if you want to learn about, it was California's version of Ellis Island. So if you want to learn immigration stories, that'll be next Friday. There's information. And Tracy, can you hear me okay? Okay, it looks like we'll have to wait one more sec before we get out of the stairwell. But thank you guys, lots of good questions. I don't know if people asked again when Hearst Castle will be open for visitors, and it looks like there wasn't an exact date, but sometime next year, I think is what the answer was.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, the opening date, a lot of information is coming out through the Cambria Tribune. So if you're curious about the road work and any up-to-date information, that's going to be your best source.
Thank you. We got a few more questions if you're still walking.
Well, I stopped. I'm back. It might take a moment for the picture to come in, and let me know when you see the assembly room.
Okay, we see it, but it's very small. There we go. Yep, good. We're set.
Is it still small?
Nope, it looks great. Thank you.
Okay. And, you know, Hearst would actually step off the elevator and come through this door right here into the assembly room. So oftentimes that door was closed, so it just looked like a paneled wall, and it would be quite a surprise when he would open up and walk through. So we are actually under the library right now on the first floor, the assembly room. And it's really hard to believe that the library is as wide as this room. And I understand that some people, once I stop moving the camera, we get a clearer picture. Might be a little pixelated. We're going to head out in just a moment. Okay. Let's head out of this door. I think we might have issues with the reception. Oh, the sun is finally peeking through. That's the south wing of the house where the kitchen is on the first floor, some staff accommodation. And I wanted to bring us to the oldest work of art at Hearst Castle. So even older than the Greek vases. Margaret, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm still here. And your picture got a little small again. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. I have my friend Liz with me today, standing in front of the oldest work in our collection. Hi, Liz. Sorry we're late. We were just chatting it up about the library.
No problem. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Hi, Liz.
All right. Well, I don't know what Tracy has told you, but I'm standing in front of a fountain called the Sekhmet Fountain, and it contains the oldest objects in San Simeon that are found on this hill. And as Tracy told you where they're from, okay, can you, if you look at the figures, can you make a guess? Any guesses?
It'll take a moment, but I bet you they're guessing.
All right, be brave, people. Does anyone have a guess? Egypt. There we go.
Yeah,
I hear Egypt.
We have Egypt coming in.
Right.
Awesome.
Egypt is a very good guess. These are Egyptian, and they are more than 3,000 years old. Now, if you look at the statue, there are 4 of them, 2 complete ones, and then 2 heads on each side. They represent a figure from Egyptian mythology called Sekhmet, and she's represented with the head of a lion and the body of a woman. And in their religion, she was a warrior princess, a goddess, and the protector of the sun god, whose name is Ra. So our segments are carved out of a rock called diorite, which is a very hard mineral, making them pretty resistant, weather resistant as far as to erosion. And I wanted you to look at the one that's closest to me, which is there. Does everybody see the circle on its head?
We're gonna zoom in. There we go. Yep.
Okay, does everyone see it? Any guesses as to what that circle represents? Remember, she's the protector of her father.
Yeah, and feel free to put in chat, guys. I know the microphone.
sun.
The sun.
Ruth Ann
Excellent,
said the
yes.
sun.
So she is the protector of the sun. Now, in the early part of the 20th century, there was a lot of interest in exotic places. And in 1922, when the tomb of King Tut was discovered, this really awakened among art collections the mania to collect all things Egyptian. And William Randolph Hearst was one of those people. And so these objects were collected between 1924 and 1930 from 2 different art dealers, one in New York and one in London. And then Julia Morgan designed the fountain, which is Art Deco in style, and her motif is a lotus, which was carved by an artist named Lorenzo Cardini.
Let's get a look at
And
that.
you can look on the side. There's a lotus on the side and then on the bottom. And in Egypt, the lotus is a symbol of rebirth. And the style of the fountain is Art Deco, which also derives a lot of its inspiration from ancient Egyptian art.
Awesome, Liz. Does anyone have any questions for Liz?
All right. Any questions?
It'll take a second. They're typing them into the chat.
Yeah.
We're on a webinar.
Okay.
Do they have to worry about preserving those statues outside? And where is the stone found?
Okay, that's a really good question. As far as I know, other than our collections team that work to conserve things, they do periodic maintenance. Diorite's a very hard mineral and it's fairly weather resistant. I don't know if Tracy can zoom in, but there's still, given these are more than 3,000 years old, a lot of detail in the face. So we don't tend to see a lot of erosion.
And there is a coating over it. They have applied a special coating to protect the stone. And there's also a hieroglyphic on the side. So we've, and the meaning of the hieroglyphic really has just been discovered. One of our new discoveries. So we are actually learning new things all the time at Hearst Castle. Someone wanted to go and see the top. I'll show that in a second. But the hieroglyphic says, "Good God, Lord of the 2 lands." And it's referring to not a god, but a king who would rule over the 2 lands of Egypt when they were separated in Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt.
So some other questions are, have there been any talks about returning the statues to Egypt, or is it even, are people able to collect this kind of art legally today?
Well, he did not buy these actually in Egypt. He bought them in England and in New York. And as far as I know, there have not been talks to return them. What I do know is it was a different time frame and a different time period. In today's art world, this would not be done, but it was very acceptable back in Mr. Hearst's day. And he was one among many collectors who did collect exotic art or art from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a good question. As far as I know, there have been nobody has asked to return them.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where in Egypt the statue came from?
I know some of them were in one of the British museums. I don't know what part of Egypt these actually came from. No, that's another good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you, Tracy? I don't know that.
No, we don't have a location in Egypt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's very clear right now too. Good picture. Thank you so much. Oh,
Awesome.
someone asked a question about someone said it's a beautiful setting. And there was a question about the pool. Is Hearst Castle outdoor pool fixed and full with water?
Well, let's go check it out.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you.
Thank you so much,
All right,
Liz.
bye.
I appreciate your
you.
time. And I know someone wanted to see the top, so I'm just going to do a slow walk around Sekhmet. Again, a little dark on this side, so let's go over here. There's that line of feldspar that naturally occurs in diorite and is seen running through the base of that figure. Well, my friends, this is as good as it gets. I know she's a little bit in shadow right now. But let's head over and answer that question about the pool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
People have such wonderful questions. Thank you, guys.
So we'll walk through the gardens. Let me share with you, I love this photo. One of the things that when you're in person, you don't always get to see are some of these images. This is from the 1940s, and it shows the whole hilltop. So we can see the big house, Casa Grande, what we call today Hearst Castle, right in the center. And Hearst wanted a harmonious whole in the design. He wanted everything to come together just right. They designed it to look like a Mediterranean village, southern Spain or Italy. And in this village, you'd have a church or a castle in the center, and you'd have the surrounding houses, the village itself. Maybe on the outskirts, you might have ancient Roman ruins. But we can see I'm just gonna circle the 3 cottages. They're all named for their views. So they were situated on the right spot at the right elevation. One's named for the view of the sun, the ocean, the mountains. So that's how they were inspired by the Mediterranean village and recreated it here in California, which is a fine place to do that since we share that Mediterranean climate. Here is Casa del Sol House of the Sun, named for its views of the sunset. So we're going to continue through the rose garden. This is one of my favorite smelling roses here. Now, as many of you know, they built for 28 years, never finished. The pool, the Neptune Pool, was built 3 different times over a span of 12 years. Here we go. We're standing on the Neptune Terrace, so we get this great view right over the top of the pool. Underneath our feet are the dressing rooms. There's 17 of them. Hearst did have 5 sons with a woman named Millicent. They would eventually separate, yet never divorce. She was involved in the construction of the house during the early part in the early 20s. It was Millicent and the 5 boys which wanted a pool. They put in a small pool in 1924. In 1926, they expanded the pool, added the terrace that you and I are standing on, looking at the pool. And then in 1934, they made a larger pool, what we see today. So they're expanding it. So the second pool is actually about the size where the first meander pattern. We're seeing that pattern again that we saw in the Greek vases. We're seeing it inside of the pool. And what makes that meander pattern is serpentine stone set up against white marble. So we get that nice contrast of color. It really makes it pop. That was the second size, the size of the second pool. Then they expanded out. Now we can see the pool is filled. The restoration of the Neptune Pool was finished about 2018, I believe, because I had been here when I first started in 2017. The pool was completely empty. It was stripped of all of its marble and its serpentine. So we can see that these ancient cultures are still influencing what we do today in our architecture, in our art. If we take a look down at these lamp standards that really light the pool beautifully at night, do you recall where we saw her before?
Oh,
There she is.
fancy hair.
Yeah, there's different variations of her, but they surround the whole pool. So we see these nice connections from one space on the estate to another space.
Someone asked if there's anything in the building straight in front of you on the other side of the pool.
That is actually a facade. So it is inspired by the Parthenon in ancient Greece, but it's just the front. There are 6 granite columns with Corinthian capitals, which is the more floral and feminine type capital at the top of the column. And those columns were imported from Italy, and they range in age from 1st century to 4th century AD. So they are, some of them are nearly 2,000 years old, and they're incorporated into this temple along with fragments of ancient Roman temples. So Hearst was buying bits and pieces, bringing them to California, and Julia Morgan is incorporating them into the temple. This is the Neptune Pool. There's a 17th century statue of Neptune in the pediment, and he's flanked by marble sea nereids, sea goddesses. So we will finish up. I'm gonna, you go ahead and you could type some questions. We're gonna finish up right down there,
Okay,
right where those stars are.
I've got a few more questions. Does the pool have a deep end, or is it one depth?
Well, it's 10 feet deep on one side, and it's 3.5 feet deep on the other side. So right about in the middle, it's about 6 feet deep.
And then did Hearst leave enough money to sustain the castle and grounds?
He left no money towards the house. So it was supported by the Hearst Corporation after his death, and then it was donated to the state of California.
Thank you, Tracy, for being so generous with your time. I know we're a little over, so appreciate it very much.
Oh, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I hope everyone enjoyed their tour. I shared that image with you because Marion Davies and her 2 Ziegfeld Folly friends stood right about here at one time back in probably the 1930s. That's where we'll wrap it up, right on one of these serpentine stars. By the deep end, by the way. This is the 10 feet deep area. I'm really glad that I got to share Hearst Castle with you. I know it's been hard. We've been closed, and the only ticket in is through a virtual tour. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy. And thank